On behalf of Markham Woods Church, I would like to welcome you here, those of you who are here presently in front of me, and also those who are online. This is a special presentation. It's a summer presentation, and we're so glad to welcome Dr. James Appel back. He's no stranger here. We've had him here before and enjoyed him very much, and we pray for your work, and we enjoyed the movie you made and your wife, and so it's been a wonderful journey that we've shared with you along the way. So thank you for coming back. And his father now, Jim Appel, will introduce him because he knows him better than I do. And then he'll have a welcoming prayer.
Let's bow our heads for a prayer. We thank you, Father, for a chance to join together and listen to how your work is going. We ask that you'll bless James and bless us as we hear. In Jesus' name, amen. I'm his son. He's going to talk. I'm his son, and he's going to talk. So go ahead. I'm his father. I don't want to be known as his father.
Well, when I say that I just turned 50 this year, it does make him kind of old. So I guess I can understand why he was worried about that. So this year is kind of a momentous occasion for me, having just turned 50, a very prominent milestone, at least for me. And it also, at the end of this year, will mark the 20th anniversary of my beginning my work in Africa. So this evening, it's how do you condense 20 years of just incredible experiences into, a tiny little presentation. So we're going to kind of fly and just hit what I think at least are the main points about how I ended up where I am now at this point in my Africa journey. So, it started way before my birth. My great-grandfather, George Appel, was one of the first missionaries in China, and he ended up in the Middle East and had all kinds of experiences that I got to hear, all kinds of stories about growing up, which influenced me, obviously, in the direction I ended up going. And then my grandfather, Jim's dad, Alva, also was born in China and spent over 20 years there, spoke Chinese fluently, ended up in India, met the Dalai Lama, all kinds of good stuff. And I grew up hearing those stories as well and being inspired. My dad was born in China. You look on his passport even today, birthplace, Shanghai, China. And he grew up in India as a missionary kid, as well as several other places. So I got this heritage of being not only a fourth-generational Adventist, but a fourth-generational Adventist missionary. It's almost like I couldn't help it. So as you know, since its early beginnings, Adventists have always emphasized the health ministry, health and education, the right and left hand of the work. So it naturally fit in also with me going into healthcare. Battle Creek Sanitarium, John Harvey Kellogg, all these things are all what led me up to spending all of my education from kindergarten through the end of medical school in Seventh-day Adventist schools, from Rogers Elementary in Walla Walla, Washington, to Sanford SDA School here in Central Florida, to Fleece, to Forest Lake Academy, to Southern Adventist University, being a student missionary for a year in Ecuador and South America, going to PUC for a year, ended up coming back and graduating from Southern, and spending 4 years at Loma Linda. So I only strayed from my Adventist heritage to go to residency in Ventura County, which was considered one of the cowboy programs that would teach you how to do everything, which is exactly what I was interested in, because I never thought about going into medicine for any reason except going out there somewhere and doing something in the line of my heritage. Now, it didn't actually end up being that smooth a process. Without criticizing anyone, I signed up to be a deferred mission appointee at Loma Linda, which meant that I was planning on going out afterwards and there'd be a loan repayment kind of deal. But I never heard back from them through my whole medical training. And as I started residency, I heard nothing. So it wasn't until there was a doctor who had kind of mentored me. I met him in Brazil and did some rotations with him in medical school. And he sent me these newsletters of these doctors, one working in Ethiopia, one working in Nigeria. And it would kind of keep me inspired. Okay, this is what I'll be doing one day as I was, immersed in the just daily grind of trying to learn to be a doctor. And one of these times, the doctor in Nigeria, Herb Giebel, wrote and said, we're starting a family practice residency. I was doing family practice. I said, hell, that sounds great, getting involved in something that will train and pass on the knowledge of my profession to future generations. So I contacted him, and then he put me in touch with Adventist Health International and Dr. Hart. So as soon as he did that, Dr. Hart emailed me and said, can you meet this week? So I drove from Ventura to Loma Linda, and there in the room was Dr. Hart and Monita Birch, who was then the health director for the Central African Union. So they talked about Nigeria and the benefits and the challenges and all this. And then at the end, Monita said, and then there's this hospital in Chad. Now, I didn't even know where Chad was, as maybe many of you don't either or didn't. But something came over me. They said, we've been trying for the last 10 years to find someone to go there. And something about my look on my face, both of them simultaneously said, you don't have to decide now. And so they said, why don't you go out and so I took a residency elective. I went to Nigeria, spent 3 weeks there. And then the plan was to spend a week in Chad. Well, that got derailed when my flights got canceled. So I was supposed to leave Wednesday and arrive in Chad on Thursday, go to the hospital on Friday. Wednesday, I got to the airport in Nigeria. Plane was canceled, already left 3 hours before it was supposed to. So they said, okay, the next flight is the next day. So Thursday now, I end up in Cameroon. I arrive, and they say, oh, your connection flight is already left. And there's not another one until tomorrow, Friday. Okay, what time Friday? At noon. Okay. So I got back at 9 in the morning, said, oh, that flight left at 6 this morning. When's the next flight? Sunday. So I said, well, I don't know anyone here in Douala. Can you get me to Yaoundé, where Monita lived? And they said, oh, there's a plane leaving right now. Go run across the airport and get onto that plane. So without a ticket or anything, I just ran across, hopped on a plane and flew to Yaoundé. Spent the weekend there, and then finally arrived in Chad on Sunday evening. Well, Monday morning, Pastor Job from the mission met me and said, well, the vehicle that's supposed to take you is no longer available, so I have to go public transport. So they had to push start the bus, filled with 22 people, and about every half an hour they were stopping to make some repairs. So a trip that should have taken 6 hours down to Kilo, where the pavement ended, we left at 10 in the morning. By 1 in the morning, we were still an hour north of Kilo, and they had the engine cover off, and you could see the valves and the pistons. So I said, Pastor Job, I don't think we're going anywhere from this point on. So he flagged down another bus that was already packed full, just like ours was, and they somehow crammed us in there. We were so tightly packed that even though I only had one part of my seat on the seat, I was able to sleep because I was literally wedged in like a sardine. So by 2 in the morning, we got to Kilo, and it was too late to go to off-roading, at that time of night. So I slept, still to this day, I don't know where, on some cement floor. And the next day, got on a motorbike and rode out on the dirt road to Bere, to the Bere Adventist Hospital. We crossed the river in a canoe, putting the motorbike in the canoe, paddling across, and getting the motorbike out and continuing on our way. By that time, it's Tuesday. My flight back to Nigeria is Wednesday morning. So I spent about 4 hours at the hospital. That's all it took to really see it, because there was about 3 patients and a lot of pigs and goats, no fence, and got back on the motorbike, went back to Kalo, got onto a bus, and started heading back towards N'Djamena, the capital. Just after sundown, we got about 160 kilometers from the capital, and the bus stopped, and the driver got out and walked away. And so I said, okay, what's going on? And Pastor Job said, oh, well, there's bandits on the road ahead. They blocked off the road, so we can't go any further. It's like, oh, I guess I'll be missing my flight. Well, what should we do? Well, let's get some mats, and let's sleep. So we got some mats laid on the ground, and I laid down on my mat. Pastor Job laid down on his mat. And I don't know if there's some signals that I don't get, but somehow all the other passengers felt invited to come and lay down on my mat next to me. So I found myself lying on my back, squeezed in between perfect strangers, staring up at the sky. And it's completely unexplainable, but all I can say is as I lay there, I looked up and I just said a prayer in my heart. I said, God, I know this is where I'm supposed to be. No, you can't explain that any other way besides God directly speaking and telling me. So I moved to Chad. And, I'm a young family practice doctor, not really knowing what I'm doing. And, within a couple of months of being there, I'm faced with a hippo bite and all kinds of other things that I was not comfortable doing. But, if the person's going to die and you're the most qualified person, then you do your best. So here I am doing my best, trying to help people in any way that I can with what limited things I had. Fortunately, there was a volunteer nurse there from Denmark who I decided to marry within 6 months, and we got married at the end of my first year there. And, I'm sorry, I'm totally trying to do two things at once. So here's my wife, Sarah, and some of the kids we were treating, you can see how primitive it is, just sticks and plaster and whatever we can come up with. And, this kid comes into my office, I just pull out a bone out of their arm, and then this was kind of also a turning point thing. This guy was on a dump truck, getting a free ride on top of a dump truck, and hit a bump and fell off. Broke his tibia and open fracture. Went to another hospital where they sutured it closed over the dirt and gravel and put a piece of cardboard behind it with an ace wrap. 3 days later, he came to our hospital. We opened it up, washed out the gravel and sand. But by then, of course, it was infected, so he's got exposed, broken bone there sitting there. So I'm like, what am I going to do? I don't have any orthopedic experience or any orthopedic materials. But we did have traction pins, the old-fashioned thing where you hook a rope and pulley on with a bag of sand to someone's leg to hold it in position so they can heal. So we had these pins, and so we have old PVC pipe in the garage. So I drilled some pins through the tibia, had someone hold it in place, and then marked the PVC pipe with a marker, drilled a hole through it, and pounded it onto the pins, and made my own external fixator. And, it worked. So a couple years, it was several years later, I think it was 2009 then, so I got there in 2004, so about 5 years after I got there, I was back in the States, and I happened to be going with a friend. They wanted to teach me how to kiteboard. That didn't work, but I was in the car with a orthopedic surgeon who asked me, what is orthopedic surgery like in Chad? So, I shared with him, casting and this, and then I told him about this PVC X-Pix, and he said, I think I can help you to do a little bit better than that. And so he sent me to this place called Sign in Washington, Tri-Cities, Washington. And there's an orthopedic surgeon who has figured out a way that you can put intermedullary rods inside femurs and tibias without needing any special equipment like intraoperative fluoroscopy or x-ray or anything. And he's just an amazing system. And he provides all the implants and gives it to people in the third world, developing world, so that they can provide first world fracture care in developing nations. I went to the whole training. Dr. Zirkle gave me all the instruments, and I went back to Chad and started doing orthopedic surgery. So this was my first patient who had a fracture who'd been, had to have some surgery up in the top corner. You can see all the hardware broke, and he was unable to walk. And so I put this thing in the bottom right. You can see the intermedullary nail with the screws, and he was able to recover and walk. So I started doing orthopedic surgery, family practice style. And then I think it was in 2009 as well. A lot happened in 2009 and 10, so it's all kind of blurs together because there's a lot of things happening. But somewhere around 2009, 2010, Pastor Job, my old friend from my first trip to Chad, came to visit me in Bere, and he said, James, let's go to Mundu. Mundu is Chad's second largest city. It was 2 hours away, about 500,000 people, and one hospital. And I'd been noticing that a lot of our patients were coming to Bere to have surgery. So I was asking myself the question, why are people leaving the large city to come to the bush to have a family practice doctor do their surgery? There must be some serious lack of medical care in Mundu, so let's check it out. So we went there, we visited the hospital. It's a government hospital, very corrupt. I don't want to go into details, but basically not adequate for the population. Then Job said, there's only one paved road at the time in Mundu. It's since changed, but at the time there's only one paved road, and the church had a property just off the main road, just across a football field from the main road, but it had been squatted up by the military for 15 years. So they wanted to get it back. But he said, we have to have a reason for getting it back. So what do you think about doing a health center? It's like, look, I got my hands full in Bere. I mean, I'm the only doctor there. I'm doing all this stuff. No. But let's go look at it anyway. So we went and looked at it. And as I'm walking through, I just started having this vision. Oh, this could be an operating room. This could be a post-op. This could be, the lab. This could be this. And I was like, well, whatever. It's not going to happen. I got back, and literally a week later, got an email from the Loma Linda Women's Auxiliary asking me if I had any projects. Well, I'm not a professional project writer, grant writer, whatever, so I just wrote about a paragraph saying, in Mundu, there's this hospital, and these people are coming here, and we have this property. And a couple weeks later, they said, well, we've voted $70,000 for you, for your project. I'm like, oh, great, I guess I have to do something now. So, but then again, when God starts something, he doesn't, leave you hanging. So then Florida Hospital at the time, it wasn't Advent Health yet, got involved. They sent us a couple of containers. They gave us $50,000 a year for 3 years. Got some one-day churches that I used as kind of tinker toys to build my hospital wards, and fences and everything else that I needed. And the AMALF, which is an organization in France, sent us another container. And so by 2012, we were ready to open the Mundu Adventist Surgery Center. So there we started, doing some of these orthopedic procedures as well. And pretty soon it became known as the orthopedic place to go to in southern Chad, mostly because there were, not anyone else doing it. So, this was just, again, doing things we're not supposed to do. You open fractures, you're not supposed to put in hardware, but you don't have anything else, do it, pray. These two guys sat on our porch for like 6 months with us devising all kinds of wound suction devices and doing all kinds of dressings, trying to get their wounds to heal. Eventually, they healed. One of them took 4 years, but he eventually did heal. Let's not go to that picture yet. So about the same time, we were invited out to Eastern Chad. So a prominent Muslim in the government, who was a constitutional advisor to the president and vice president of the Supreme Court, happened to have his office right next to one of our board members for Adventist Health International. So one day he said to Aimee, our board member, I hear what you Adventists are doing down in Bere. Why don't you come to our part of the country? So Aimee told me that, and I said, okay, well, I'm definitely not looking for anything to do now. I've got 2 things going, but, I want to see Eastern Chad. If he wants to take us out for free, no problem. So we drove out 900 kilometers across Chad, about a 12-hour journey, ended up in Abu Gudam near Abeshe, not far from the Sudanese border. He said, okay, what property you want? Let's go look at properties. So then I pointed to one and said, oh, this looks good. A month later, he gave us the deed for the land. So, now I've got something else to do. But that gets further in the story. Fortunately, it didn't all pile in too much at one time. In the meantime, Sarah and I had been married for, 5 years or more, 7 years almost at this point, and we decided we wanted to try and have kids. Well, it wasn't working. So we went to Denmark, we had IVF, and she got pregnant with twins. So that was nice. And so about 2011, we decided some more doctors were coming to Bere. They took over in Bere. We were going to move to Mundu. Let's take a sabbatical and go have some kids, recover. So after 7 years, a good time to take a sabbatical. So in 2011, we left Chad for about 8 months, came to Ventura, California, had our twins, and then 3 months later, we took them back to Chad. So we have Miriam and Adam. And so they were 3 months old when they got there. And when they were 6 months old, we took a vacation and went to Koza Adventist Hospital in northern Cameroon to visit our friends there. On the way back, in N'Djamena, on the way down, Adam had a fever. Well, in Chad, you know what fever means. It means malaria. So I was like, I know where the place I want to go. I'm going to Bere. So we took him down to Bere, started him on the treatment. Sure enough, they confirmed that they had malaria. And Miriam had it too, so we hooked them both up to the drips. And that was on a Friday, our wedding anniversary. The next day, they were doing fine. We hooked up the next drip, and within a few minutes, Sarah said, did Adam have a seizure? And we looked over, he was not breathing. So We tried to revive him, but after about 45 minutes, we had to call it quits, and he died. So we had to bury him that same day there. And, many people were comforting and gracious. Of course, most people were, I would say, including many people from this church. But some questioned why we would take our infant child to a place like Chad where we knew they could get malaria. So that made us, ask a lot of questions. Like, how many Chadian children would I have to save in order to feel that the risk to my own children was worth it? In other words, how many Africans is my child worth? And the answer is one. They're all equal. All children are equal in God's sight. And to me, while there was a very, of course, painful moment that I could never have imagined happening, at the same time, it was one of those moments where I feel like my life was turned around in the way I view things, which led to a lot of the other experiences that I've been able to have in Africa. That realization that all of God's children are of equal worth, and we are called to make sacrifices. Sacrifice has kind of gotten a bad name in our society, because, we're very self-centered. We think that, it used to be back in the day when missionaries went out, it was expected they would probably lose somebody. But now we think, well, if you have any risk at all, you shouldn't go. If there's any danger, is it safe over there? But really, if we are Adventists and we believe that death is asleep, and if God puts some of his children to sleep for the night, knowing he's going to wake them up in the morning, then is he really a bad father? Or is it just something temporary? We all know that there is that morning coming. So we grieved, of course, but we decided to stay in Africa. So we moved to Mundu and spent 2 years there. And then an American general surgeon arrived in 2014. I taught him the sign technique, as you can see there, and he took over. And then we moved to Abeshe in eastern Chad, where in Abu Gudam, we built these crazy earth domes, and believe it or not, those 4 little domes there is the operating room, and started an open hospital there. And by the time we opened it in 2016 or 17, it took about 6 or 7 years for that project to get going, because we wanted it to. We went in there very slowly. We made friends with the population. We hired the local people, so they felt it was part of their project. And by the time we opened up, we literally had about 200 to 300 people waiting at about 5 in the morning to get their names on a list to be seen in like 2 or 3 days, because we were so backed up. So God really blessed us, even though it took a long time. And again, we became kind of the reference hospital there. But before that hospital opened, in 2014, while we were still working on it, I don't know if you remember what 2014 meant to West Africa. It didn't really hit America that much, but that was Ebola time. And so I was sitting on the floor in one of my Muslim friends' house in Abeshe drinking tea, and we were discussing Ebola because they were all freaking out, and they're talking about all the various remedies. If you drink hot water at this certain time of day, then you won't get Ebola, or whatever the case may be. And I get a phone call from Descartes saying, "James, we want you to go to Liberia for Ebola." Now, my first thought was, you're crazy. I'm very important. I'm doing this big project here. I've already made all these relationships in Chad. Why would I put my life at risk? But then that same thought came back to me, well, how many Liberian lives is my life worth? And the answer was 1. So I said, well, so what would make it worth it for me to go there? If I save 2 Liberian lives, then it's a net gain. And I knew I would save more than 2. So then the question was answered, and I went to Liberia and for 6 weeks, and that was really a crazy time. Basically, there was only 2 hospitals still open in the entire country: the Adventist Hospital with 1 doctor and me making the 2nd doctor, and ELWA Hospital where they were treating Ebola patients. So since they were treating Ebola patients there, nobody wanted to go there if they had anything except Ebola. So our job was to try and keep Ebola out of our hospital and treat the other things that people were dying of because they had nowhere else to go. So the way we did that was very scientific. I would get a stethoscope and a mask and some gloves, and I'd walk out to the taxi that had brought the patient in, open the back door of the taxi, look at them, and decide if they had Ebola or not. But you think about it, that's a heavy responsibility, because if you say you have Ebola, that means get out of here, and then if it's not Ebola, you're going to die, even though you could have lived if we would have let you in. But if you have Ebola and I let you in, then our hospital is going to shut down. Some of our staff are going to die. I may die. And I have to make that decision without being able to really test for it, just based on symptoms. Now, they all knew what the symptoms of Ebola were for, so they were not going to tell you if they had any of those symptoms because they knew what that meant. So an impossible task. And yet God still somehow kept us open and working and saving lives during that time. But to get away, I had to go somewhere. I had to get out of the city. So everyone said, you got to go to Robertsport. And we went to Robertsport. You can see down there on the left is Lake Peace, is the ocean, and then the sandbar there separates the ocean from Lake Piso, which is a huge lake that is a natural reservoir of all kinds of pygmy hippos and crocodiles and manatees, and it's a natural reserve that's just filled with wildlife. An amazing place. And then coming up from that is a hill, and on top of that hill is a little hospital called St. Timothy Government Hospital. And I remember standing up there. The hospital is closed, of course, and just thinking, I would like to work in a place like this someday. And that thought didn't leave me. But I survived Ebola, went back to America, had my last child, Isaac. So we had 3 then, because we had in between, Adam died, then we had Mary, then we had Noah, and then we had Isaac. And then we went back to Baraka Adventist Hospital, the Blessing Adventist Hospital. Baraka is very important in Islam. It means blessing, God's blessing. So we named our hospital Baraka, and we continued to do the things we were doing. And then Sarah and I felt like this was the culmination of our work, working with 100% Muslim population in French and Arabic, with this crazy hospital, Echo Dome, that we'd invested so much time in. We planned on moving there and probably finishing our careers there. We bought land on top of a hill overlooking this beautiful view and started building some Echo Domes for our own habitation. And when we got about this high, the mayor came and said, you have to have a building permit. It's like, okay, well, how do we do that? And so he said, you just apply here, but you can keep working, there's no problem. So I applied for it. 2 days later, got back, your building permit has been rejected. So it turns out we were being used as a pawn in a political battle, which I won't go into details, but basically the Sultan and the prefet was against the governor and the mayor, and they were fighting, and they were using us as an excuse, saying, the mayor's you're not doing your job, you're putting them in a dangerous situation, you shouldn't let them build there. And then they were concerned because we're on top of a hill and we were going to drill a well. What are you drilling? What are you looking for there? What are you going to do if you find uranium? It was a big mess. And so we had to stop building. We lost by that time we'd invest about $10,000 in it. Not much by standards here, but a lot over there. And we just lost it. And I said, wow, I thought we were supposed to move here. What's going on, God? So about that time, time for our annual leave. We went back to the States, and I remember praying, and God just telling me, it's time to get back into clinical work. All this project stuff, administrative stuff, it's not you. You need to get back into clinical work. So I went back to Chad, and we were staying with some friends of ours outside of N'Djamena. They have a farm. A Swedish girl married to a half Chadian, half French man. They're both cheesemakers, hence how they met. And they became good friends of ours. We were staying with them, and one Saturday afternoon, I was sitting there and talking, and my friend who is Muslim, the half Chadian, half French guy, says, there's a Christian hospital nearby here. I said, oh, really? Yeah, we should go visit. I said, yeah, let's go now. So I went over there and met the British couple who were running it, a surgeon and an OBGYN. Started talking, and we shared with him where we were, our journey. And I shared that I was thinking I need to get back into clinical work. He said, oh, that's interesting, because we're about to leave in a week on furlough, and we don't have anyone to cover the hospital. The government says, if we don't have anyone to cover, we're going to have to close the hospital down. How would you like to come and work here? So I said, sure. So we moved on to this hospital compound, and started working at the Guinea-Bissau 2 Hospital, where, again, I continued to do all these sign nails. So by this point, I had opened 4 different sign nail programs, and at 3 of them, nurses are doing the intermedullary nails still to this day. So we started working at the Guinea-Bissau 2 Hospital, and then I would travel once every month or two out to Abu Ghudam. I'd get my RAV4 at about 4 in the morning and travel by myself 900 kilometers across Chad. Beautiful drive. Get there on a Friday afternoon, take Sabbath off, and then start working Sunday through Friday, do surgeries, all day long for 6 days, rest on Saturday, come back on Sunday. And that's how I kept involved out there, and that was training, the local doctors and everything. So that's how that worked. And I would say that, it's the experience I've been able to have there are amazing, especially for a family practice doctor. But I can say I'm probably the only doctor to have ever done a C-section and an intermedullary nail for a broken femur on the same patient in the same operation. So there's the happy baby coming out there. And, all kinds of other stuff I ended up doing just as time went on. People came and were showing me different things. Done over 1,000 of those surgeries for broken femurs and tibias. And then it was time to say goodbye. It was a tough decision. My wife wasn't necessarily in agreement, but she knew that I was getting burned out, and we always wanted to say, hey, we're going to leave when the time is right, when we still like this place. And so we had to say goodbye, but where to go? And the only thing that I could think about was going to Robertsport. I couldn't get it out of my mind. So in 2018, I took a trip over there and with a good friend of mine, and we arrived. And I wasn't able to spend as much time in the hospital as I wanted because my medical license turned out to be a fake. And so we paid the guy, and he just gave us a fee. We used to work for them, but he didn't tell us that he's no longer working for them. So I was unable to really work in the hospital, but I was able to kind of see around the community. And one of the things that I really felt like I was going to miss about Chad was working with Muslims, because I knew Liberia was a Christian country. Well, I'm sitting on the porch one evening in Robertsport with all the surfers and asking them, so how's your spiritual life? What church do you go to? And they're like, oh, we don't go to church. We're Muslims. I'm like, what? You're surfers? You're Muslim surfers? Wearing shorts and T-shirts? You don't look like Muslims that I'm used to in Chad, with the turbans and the long robes. But I guess obviously that's a stereotype. So it turns out that Robertsport is 70% Muslim, and the county that Robertsport is the capital of is 90% Muslim. It's the only Muslim-dominant county in all of Liberia. So God was again telling me, hey, I got you on this one. So Scott Nelson and I have become friends. He's the orthopedic surgeon at the Haiti Adventist Hospital. We put on this medical boot camp where I started learning these other crazy things, like correcting kids with deformed limbs and things. And Scott arranged for me to go to this conference. Where we go? Here we go. Baltimore Limb Deformity Conference, where I learned all these crazy things. This is a different slideshow. I'm just kind of running through this. This is not really, I guess, that interesting to you guys. But I was learning all this stuff, and then ended up back in Liberia working at that same hospital that I'd said one day I would like to work in a hospital like this. And so we were in a difficult living situation, but we made the best of it. We started adapting to the life of living on the beach. That wasn't that hard, but the living situation was difficult. For the first year, we were living in a slum in an old hotel on the second floor with no fence, with a bar a block away, and that would go sometimes till 5 a.m. with basically turning it into an outdoor discotheque. And then directly across the street was a video club with the speakers directly pointing into our living room window. Instead of pointing into where the people were watching it was pointing out directly at us. And it got to the point where there was one night where Sarah was like, I can't take this anymore. We're not sleeping. I'm going crazy. So I said, well, let me go try and do something. So I walked outside, walked down the stairs, walked across the street, went in through the not really a door, but the opening into the video club, And I saw the guy there. I said, "Who's in charge of this place?" He said, "Oh, I am." I said, "Any way you can turn that speaker around?" And he said, "Yeah, tomorrow." I said, "If I help you, can we do it tonight?" He's like, "Yeah, sure." So I went, I got a pair of pliers, and I came out, and I climbed onto there was a little like roof over the veranda, climbed on top of it so I could get to the speaker, kind of tore away some of the sheet metal of the wall so I could spin it around. As soon as I spun it around, the power went out, and it became completely quiet. And it was a big football match, apparently. There's about 150 people inside, and they all came pouring out, and they were yelling and arguing, and I'm standing up there on the roof. But I realized they weren't really looking at me. They were arguing amongst themselves. So I quietly climbed down and walked across the street and back up into my house, and that was the only night we had a good night's sleep. But we stayed in that for a year. And not only that, but there were street preachers who would get visions at night and feel they needed to preach immediately. So about 2 a.m, they would get up and start banging a drum and singing and preaching in the street. There was a Pentecostal church that felt like exorcisms could only be done at 4 a.m, apparently. And so there was a lot of screaming at that point. And then there was a church literally right at the next door to us that is the most punctual church I've ever met in my life. They would put the Swiss and the Germans to shame. Literally at 6 a.m. sharp, not 5:59, not 6:01. They would bang a gong exactly 30 times to call the faithful to prayer. So we could never sleep in past 6 o'clock. So we were there for a year, somehow survived that, started working at the hospital, and eventually, got, at first there was not much going on, lots of beach time, but then literally we started getting, more and more busy, first things, and then we started doing some of these crazy deformity corrections. People started coming, and then before we knew it, people were coming from all over the country to get their limbs corrected and old fractures that had not healed. And I don't know if this is going to... This is supposed to be a video. How can we play it? Oh, there we go. There. So that was a 18-year-old girl who... she's the one on the left there after her correction in the yellow t-shirt. You can see all the surgeries that we did on the first one there and then the second one. And so I got to really be able to do some amazing things. This girl, good Muslim girl with what's called windswept knees, all kids. Another girl. There's her afterwards. A cute little dress. This girl had osteogenesis imperfecta where their bones just break easily, and we were able to stabilize her. And there's a couple other girls' friends. And anyway, just on and on, we started doing all these things. And we were really I was very satisfied there. I was to be able to do these amazing things and living on the beach. My family was loving it. My kids were running wild in the bush, climbing trees, running barefoot, half naked, dirty all the time. It was just a great place for them to go. But the schools were just not that great. In Chad, we put our kids in Catholic French school, and they were, 50 to a classroom, but they were learning. They were, they were disciplined. They were learning, and everything was in French, so they were learning French, and it was good. So we decided we'll put them in local schools in Robertsport. Well, of course, somewhere along the way, as you know, COVID hit, so the schools were closed. The only benefit of COVID was my dad was there when they closed the airport, so he had to stay an extra month. He was pretty happy about that. We were happy, but he wasn't so thrilled. But he ended up getting back eventually. And so then when we finally put him in the school, they were not only not learning anything, they were learning bad habits, bad things, since they were like, we've got to find a solution. About that this was in now 2021, I believe, 2021. In the fall, we're like, what are we going to do with our kids? And then about that time, too, we'd come back from furlough. It was October, and we found there had been a big political battle in the hospital. A new doctor had come in, and she was trying to oust the medical director, and they were, doing these political games. And in the end, what basically happened is the nurse anesthetist, who was an Adventist guy, left because of all this trouble. Sarah had been doing anesthesia, but she was a nurse, but she'd learned anesthesia in Chad, and so she had been covering for him when he'd been gone before, so she started covering for him again. And then they brought in, the new doctor brought in another anesthetist. Turned out he was a drug addict, didn't have a license or any papers. So when the medical director asked him for his license or any kind of diploma or anything, he couldn't produce anything. So the medical director, rightly so, said, you can't work here until you bring a paper. Then the other doctor went to the county health officer and said, why is this doctor, our medical director, preferring this white woman over our African brother? So then the county health officer, even though she knows the realities there, she had to tell Sarah, no, you can't do it. So basically we shut down for 3 weeks. Weren't able to do anything. So then we started saying, well, why are we even here? The beach is great. It's nice. But we didn't come here to just be on the beach. Yeah, partly to be at the beach, but also to, do our medical missionary work. And so we started looking around, and we went to ELWA Hospital, that other hospital that had been open during Ebola. We went to SDA Cooper Hospital in Monrovia to see what the possibilities were. And neither one of them seemed to quite fit. We just weren't getting, in every other project it had been so obvious. God had really made it clear, I'm supposed to be in Chad, supposed to open Mundu, go to Abeshe, don't be there full time, go to this other hospital. Like all these have been so clear, and I was like, well, why is it not clear this time? So we prayed about it, we put out some fleeces, and we said, okay, if we can get another doctor to help me here, and because eventually the situation cleared up, both of those doctors left, and they brought in 2 new doctors who were great to work with. They brought it, and they had no problem with Sarah doing anesthesia. So I said, well, if I can get another doctor to help me, and we can get someone to homeschool our kids this week. And we gave 1 week because we had to make a decision. And within 48 hours, we had someone from our church in California who said, I will drop out of nursing school for a year and come and teach your kids. And another doctor who had contacted me a year or 2 before but couldn't come because of COVID contacted me again and said, okay, I'm done with all my fellowships. I still want to do 6 months with you. Can I come? And so within 48 hours, we had our answer. We're supposed to stay in Robertsport for at least 6 more months. And then we ended up then going to the SDA Cooper Hospital back in the Adventist system in Monrovia. These are all just it's picture after picture. It's just we went back to Haiti for the earthquake in 2021. These are all just, boring pictures of the same old thing. More kids. There's the twins standing straight. So I end up back in SDA Cooper Hospital. Now, I don't know. I always swore I would never go back to that place. My dad told me one time, don't ever tell God you won't do anything because you might end up there. I said, I'm never going to work in the city. I'm never going to work at this dungeon hospital. But, it's in a great location. And, to be honest, Monrovia, it may be a city of 1 million people, but there's not very much access to health care. This is in the center of the city, in the heart of one of the most, in the business district. But it's shown the wear of time. This was built in the 1960s by one of Liberia's prominent doctors, Dr. Cooper, who did an surgery, medical school, surgical residency, and oncology fellowship in the States, and then went back to Liberia, helped them start their national reference hospital, was their medical director, started the National Medical Society, and the West African College of Surgeons. This guy was one of the most amazing doctors in West Africa. And then he had his private clinic here. And of course, in 1980, when there was a coup d'etat in Liberia and the old regime fell and they descended into chaos until 2003, he had to flee the country. He almost got killed in the fallout because he was the personal physician of the president who had been killed. And the only thing that saved him is one of the soldiers said, oh, he did an emergency C-section, saved my mother's life, and didn't even charge me for it. So he saved the doctor, but he fled to the U.S., and then he died there. And so the family then sold the hospital in 1985 or 86 to the Adventist Church. And then it is, in the meantime, I don't think had any renovations. And then in 2003, I believe, or 2004, there was an eye hospital that was built a block away, and most of it was never used. They had a whole 26-bed inpatient unit, but ophthalmology surgery is outpatient, so they never ever used it except for storeroom. They had a full emergency area, offices, consultation rooms, a huge operating room that could fit 3 operating rooms in it. It was just this a room literally probably half as big as this sanctuary just for doing a couple of small eye surgeries. Anyway, the ophthalmologist who's there, he retired. We moved the ophthalmology into the main building, and now we're remodeling this into a orthopedic trauma center with 3 operating rooms, a 3-bed trauma bay, and another 8-bed emergency room, and then all of the sterilization, laundries, 26-bed inpatient thing. So that's kind of the project that we're working on now. There's some of the plans, blah, blah, blah. And that's what we do to stay sane. There's my family and me surfing. So that's how we ended up where we are now in Liberia. We're spending 4 days a week in Monrovia at the SDA Cooper Hospital, working on, remodeling, renovating the whole place and turning it into really an orthopedic trauma center, and then spending our weekends back in Robertsport recovering. So that's how we ended up where we are at now. The end. Any questions? So she's asking what makes this place run, who's supporting it. So when we were in Robertsport for the first 3 years in Liberia, it was a government hospital, so it was the Ministry of Health. And then we were getting support from a small NGO that it works there, as well as since 2011, I haven't been working directly as a paid missionary. I've been volunteering, and then I come back to the States and work some ER shifts in Northern California. And then we live on that the rest of the year. So I continued to do that in Liberia as well, and even up to that's why I'm back in the States right now. I just finished a couple of ER shifts in California. But then the hospital itself, now the SDA Cooper Hospital, is a part of Adventist Health International. So they're the ones who have been raising the money to finance for the renovation projects and are helping us to get our finances in order. The whole place is, I could spend a whole time talking about the mess that place is in. But little by little, hopefully God is helping us to straighten things up and make it a functioning hospital again, is the idea. So Adventist Health International is the main one supporting it, yeah.
What about the kids? What are they doing?
So they can. We found the homeschooling was great for them, and they could do it themselves. They just have these DVDs, they stick in their little thing, and they watch the teacher and then do the homework. We don't even have to watch them. So we just go off to the hospital and leave them at home, and they do their homeschooling. And then this next year, we're living on the ELWA actually hospital campus because it's a bigger campus. The SDA Cooper Hospital is very small. There's not really a place for kids to run and be free like our wild kids love to do. So they're on this big compound with lots of trees on the ocean and other kids to play with. So they'll be going to the missionary school there on the compound this year. There's a microphone here. I guess they want you to.
I could stand here all night and talk because it's just many of us have followed and watched and been kept informed, and I just can't tell you how wonderful it is to have you here and to get the update on the family and everything. You went surfing with a couple of guys in the village on the ocean where they thought the plague started there. Do you remember that? You weren't supposed to go there. They had
that's Robertsport. That's what I showed the earlier pictures. So that was the place where we ended up going a couple of weekends when I was first in Liberia during the Ebola crisis to get away. That's how I ended up connecting to Robertsport, the place on the hill, looking on the ocean with the lake. And it was not where Ebola started, but Ebola had come there and had closed the whole place down. And
Yeah.
one of the surfers had to be put into quarantine for, 3 weeks. He was
Yeah.
locked up in a school.
So you weren't
somewhere.
supposed to be there.
Well, they didn't. The medical director of SDA Cooper didn't want me to go. He thought it was too dangerous, but I had to get out. And so it was the other American doctor and I went, and it was not dangerous. It was fine.
Cool.
Yeah. It was more dangerous to be in the hospital with the Ebola than to be outside on the beach. Much more dangerous to be inside than outside at that time. Yeah.
So, being a third world country, I'm kind of new to all this. Can you use like expired trays and medicines and stuff like that over here? Or?
It's kind of tricky. So, as you may know, medicines don't actually expire. The United States government has been doing a study for like the last 40 plus years, and they found that there's been no decrease in efficacy of any medicines that they've tested as long as they're kept in appropriate conditions. So it's not like the FDA or anyone who fixes the expiration date, it's the manufacturer. And all the manufacturer has to do is be able to guarantee that by that date, it's at least 80% potency is retained. But it doesn't mean it loses it. And if you notice, almost all expiration dates are about the same. Now, would it really make sense that every medicine expires after 2 years or 3 years? It's a purely, commercial endeavor so that they can make you throw it away. So I have no problem using expired medications. Unfortunately, that myth has spread to the third world, so we have to be careful because they do periodically come by and check our pharmacy, the Ministry of Health, and they want to make sure we have no expired medicines on the shelf. So we just have to find places that we can hide them out. But yes, we can use. And as far as supplies, I mean, can a syringe expire? We're having a hard time getting rid of plastic when we try. So I mean, can a plastic tube expire? If it works, it works.
So things are still considered sterile even past their expiration.
You have to look. You can look at it, right? I mean, you can see if the package looks damaged or if it's opened or whatever. Mm-hmm. And some of the things, bottom line is, yes, we can. The hard part is getting it over there. Baggage. They're lowering the limits. They're increasing the rates on extra bags. So it's just hard to get stuff over there. So it always is weighing that balance between the stuff that we're getting to take over. And it's hard because, I can go to the Advent Health warehouse where they throw all kinds of unexpired stuff away. Exactly. I can get containers full of stuff, but it's a matter of shipping, it over there. So, yes.
Chance forever, hold your peace.
Okay, so someone is wanting to ask about my future. So, as I kind of mentioned at the beginning, this year is a momentous year. Just turned 50, and I'm about to celebrate my 20th anniversary of being in Africa as well. And so we've actually decided that we're going to be retiring from Africa, at least temporarily, starting January 2 of 2024. But we'll still stay in Africa to finish out the school year for our kids. But I won't be doing anything new, but I'll just be taking care of my old patients. Because some of these patients you see with all those frames and everything, you have to follow them for months and months and months. I can't abandon them. But I will stop doing any new surgeries or cases as of January 2. And then our kids are getting old enough where they need to get into school systems. So we were always planning on going to Denmark when they got to high school. So that's still in the plan. And then we'll have a couple years before that. So we'll probably be coming to the States, probably the West Coast, so I can continue to work out there in the ER that I've been working in. And the plan is to take our kids around and see as much of the natural wonders of this country as we can before we move permanently to Europe. That's the tentative plan now. And then when our kids are through high school, then we'll probably go back out. Sarah and I will probably go back out somewhere. In the meantime, we'll probably be making trips back and forth. I don't think I'll be able to stay away from Africa for too long. But I am ready for a break. I mean, believe it or not, I am a little burned out. So I'm ready for a little bit of a break, yeah.
I noticed in the pictures that you had there, you were talking about the deformities that seem to be in one particular location. Is that fact, or that's what it appeared in the?
Yeah,
in
a lot of them.
And is there an identifiable reason why?
Yes.
There's a lot of deformities in that area.
Yeah. So there's two basic causes of it. One is where the growth, when you're growing, there's a place on your bone called the growth plate that allows you to grow. And there's just a disease called Blount's disease where some kids, it just grows asymmetrically, and so it makes them slowly bow out as they grow. And especially if they're overweight, then there's more weight placed on that and it causes more bowing. And then there's also rickets, which most people know is vitamin D deficiency, but there's also a nutritional rickets, which has to do with not getting enough calcium, anything that makes your bones soft, basically. Then as you grow and you put weight on it, the bones bend because they're not strong enough to stay straight because they don't have enough calcium or vitamin D to make the bones strong. And that's why it's mostly the legs, because those are the weight-bearing ones. You're not really bearing much weight with your hands. So you can have some deformities of the hands, but it's also not as crucial. If you have a little bending of your forearm, it's not as big a deal as if you have bending of one side or the other. It makes you, not able to walk straight. So that's the main reason why. And then the other thing is nobody's been doing this surgery in Liberia probably ever. So it may not be that there's that much more, but kids here would tend to get corrected sooner, and then they're less likely to, of course, have the nutritional rickets in this country where everything is fortified with calcium and vitamin D. But the fact is that it's just been those environmental or nutritional factors, as well as the fact that no one's going to get to the age of 18 and have their legs completely bent behind them here, because you would get that fixed a lot sooner as a child. Yeah.
So it didn't show up in other places because there was better surveillance or something like that?
Well, the fact is, most of these kids are seen as kind of freaks, so they don't get out much. So you don't just go around the village and see them. They're going to be inside hiding somewhere. I'm sure they're in Chad and other places. I just never saw them because I was never able to do anything for them. And it was just like, as soon as I got a couple, most of the ones I first started with were just people who had old fractures that then healed because they didn't go get set properly, so they healed bent. So I started with those, and then little by little the word got out. And then it's actually nice. And also now, when I was in Chad, cell phones were just coming in after I'd been there a couple of years. When I was first there, all I had was a satellite phone for basic email. And then, the progression of social media now in Liberia, with the social media, Facebook, and everyone's on it, the word gets out a lot faster. So someone posts some pictures of a kid who had bent legs and is now straight, pretty soon the whole country knows. So it just has made it easier for all those kids in, hidden out places to actually find out, there is somebody here who can do something about it.
I remember the first trip we were there, the satellite phone.
Yeah.
And it changed a lot in, 18 months or something when the cell system came in there?
Exactly.
It was quite funny.
Yeah, it was really amazing to watch that transformation because they jumped straight from nothing to cell phones. They didn't go through the landline intermediary stage, so they went from no communication to everybody being able to communicate. It's pretty fun to watch. Yeah.
Say, we're just visiting here, so we don't know these people and all this. I'm a sonographer.
Okay.
And I know with the different communities I join with, I know a lot of people who have an interest in going out of the country and missionary and helping, but we don't know any organization that uses sonographers. So I was wondering what your knowledge is.
Come on over. We would love to have a sonographer. We don't have a sonographer. We have a couple, like those handheld butterfly IQ ultrasounds, and then one of the little laptop sonosites. And but right now it's just me and the other doctors, doing a few every once in a while, kind of the basic, OB stuff and whatever. But it would be great to have a sonographer there, especially someone who could train one of our staff to do that. So, yeah, let me get your contact afterwards. I would love to have a sonographer.
One of our first trips to Barrie, you have no electric power. We came back a little bit later with Markham Woods, and we put solar system in your hospital. How'd that affect you?
Well, I mean, having electricity is kind of one of the basic things for being able to, provide a more higher quality of services, obviously. So definitely that had a big impact. Now, unfortunately, the hospital was growing at the same time too, so it kind of outgrew that. That solar system was adequate for the time when it was installed, but it kind of quickly outgrew that because our hospital just expanded quite a bit. And so by the time we left in 2011, they were already in need of more. Yeah, but it was still nice because it provided a backup system for night. Like it couldn't run the things during the day when we had everything running, 2 operating rooms and everything. But at night it could provide lights, and we didn't have to run the generator at night. And the batteries could be charged also by the generator, so that was nice. And it also, because a lot of our stuff was 110, so it was kind of like because we had we had 3 220 inverters, but we also had a 120 inverter. So that allowed us to run all the lab equipment, microscopes, and then all the OR stuff that was 110 without having to have a major transformer. So yeah, it had a very positive impact on the hospital. Yeah. Rather than they were running those kerosene fridges where they're always having to mess with it. It was always not working. It was always, getting too hot, and yeah.
Just interesting, somewhat of a self-serving question, I guess. I wonder if the doors are still on the building in Chad, in Berry.
I haven't been to Berry in a long time, but it's been probably since 2018. I haven't been there, but they were still hanging and working when I was there in 2018. So.
Actually, I saw on Facebook a couple of years ago some pictures that somebody had posted, and they weren't about anything about the doors, but I did see the doors.
If you're looking for some more carpentry work to do, we have a big renovation project in Liberia.
I don't know where that is.
I'll show you. All right, let's pray. God, I'm so grateful for the life that you have given me and for the experiences that I have been able to have, and for this church and the support that it has been, and for everything that you are doing around the world, and how you have such an intricate plan that you work out in all of our lives, and how they can weave together in this crazy puzzle that only you could figure out. And we just ask that you will keep us open to your guidance and leading, and take away our fears, and allow us to be willing to go and do whatever it is you ask of us. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.